holding it in your hand, and when I was stressed or nervous, you know, if I was wondering what the day was going to bring, you know, each day at that point, it just sort of gave me that sort of comfort. It's weird that's the attack, that was the emotion. It just like comforted me.
Hello, thank you for coming and talking with me today. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Joanne D'Agostino Minardi, Sicilian and Italian.
Okay.
I'm retired. I worked for the state of Utah for 29 years. I did eligibility for financial, food stamps, medical, child care. I was an employment counselor, trainer, program specialist. The last years, how many years there, where it drags on, you know, you forget the exact number of years. I was the state child care assistance program specialist.
Wow.
And that's what I retired as. I'm married. I have, that's a whole other story I'll get into later. I have one daughter. She'll be 51 this year. And I have one granddaughter. She was an only child. She married an only child, and they have an only child. So. But I'm from a big family.
Okay.
I have seven sisters, and we found another one last year that we didn't know about, which was just shocking to everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe it's 8 sisters, and her makes 9. A couple of stepsisters, you know, his, hers, and ours. We found her last year, which was just so amazing, from Ancestry.com. That's about the basics, I guess.
Perfect. Okay, so Jo wants to start from, instead of going chronologically from the past to the present, she wants to start right now and kind of go back with her story and tell it in, how would we say that?
The reverse.
The reverse.
I always do things a little bit, you know, unconventional.
That's great.
So.
That's awesome. So I'm going to start with my last question. No.
Okay.
So let's start. Do you want to tell them what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, I thought I would talk about quitting smoking.
Okay.
And what prompted me to quit smoking, and the results of that is why I am where I am today. And then I'll tie that into what makes that so significant.
Okay.
And I hope that something that I might be able to say to somebody else out there would give them hope to know that they can conquer anything. They can get through anything with the Lord watching out for them. You know?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So you recently quit smoking.
Yeah.
You want to tell us about
I
that?
quit smoking January 2019. What led to me quitting smoking is kind of what this story is all about. I met Blake, my husband, years and years and years before. We dated 17 years before we were ever married, and we've now been married 14 years.
Oh, wow.
So we've been together like 31, 32 years. He was a member of the church. I was not a member of the church. And so through our
this is the Church of
Jesus Christ
of Latter-day Saints. Okay.
Yeah. And so he'd been on a mission, but he hadn't really been active for quite a few years when we met. So he didn't smoke, of course, and he didn't drink, and I did from my past that I'll get into in a little bit. And so at one point in our relationship, I became a member. I was baptized in like 1990. And we still didn't become really active. For some reason, we moved from Layton. I moved from Layton into Ogden. I went to a couple of wards and, you know, visited now and then. And so it wasn't a real everyday type of thing. But he had always wanted me to quit smoking, And I was like, well, I will when I'm ready, or, you know, you kind of get that attitude, you know, I'm not ready yet, I think I could quit anytime I want, you know, and I would tell him, and then I would say, okay, well, I'll quit smoking, and then I would maybe quit for a day, and then you'd start again, because it's an addiction, it's an absolute addiction, you know, and so as the years went on, and he wasn't asking me to marry him, and I was like, do I stay with him or not? But we were contented. I mean, it was just like, you know, he lived next door in a little apartment. I had this cute little house that I was in, and he was in a duplex next door. So, and he worked with the state. I got him a job at the state as well, so he worked with the state. So it was kind of comfortable, you know. It was almost so comfortable that you stay like in that stay in that mold, you know. You don't sort of progress out of it. And it got to the point where I was like, well, okay, so am I happy this way, or do I want to get married, or what is it that why he wouldn't want to get married? And so one night we were at Eastern Winds, and it was kind of our anniversary dinner, and of the time that we had met, and I said, you gonna marry me or not? You know, bottom line. And you start crying, and you know, and it makes him feel bad, and then you feel bad because maybe he's asking you just because he feels bad, right? But he asked me to marry him, and he said, but you have to quit smoking. I mean, this was, you know, years before we actually got married. We got married in 2005. So I see that's how long it was. And so I quit for a little bit, you know. I quit, it was the first of the year, I guess he'd asked me, and we got married in June of that year, June 2005. So I had quit for a little time, but then I still smoked, and I didn't tell him that I still smoked. But I was very good at hiding it, you know, very good at hiding it, which always didn't feel right to me, but again, it's an addiction, you know. And so when we got married, his mother passed away in April. We got married in June, and she passed away in April. And my dad was pretty sick, and he passed away the day before our wedding.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of a happy, sad occasion. And I think that triggered in me that smoking was always what I had done throughout my life when I was in stressful situations. You know, and so I think that sort of helped trigger that. And all my family smoked. I'm from a family that everybody smoked. My dad, my mom, my sisters, everybody smoked. And so it was just really hard, I think, during that week that the whole family was there, and he had passed away. So we had a wedding and a funeral, all in 1 week. And so the years went on. You know, the years went on. We got married. We bought our house in North Ogden, beautiful house, and we had a good marriage. I mean, it was a really solid marriage. But there was something within him that he felt he needed to take care of, and so he went and did what he needed to do to take care of it, and as a result of his desire to be a better person and a better man. And we really, really wanted to go to the temple. We really wanted to, because now we'd been back at church, and we had started to go back to church like maybe 3 years, you know, and we were just progressing, and we were happy, and the church brought such peace into our lives and into our relationship. And because of his strong desire to, you know, to grow and to progress and to be a better person, that started working on me as well, because here I'd been lying to him all these years, you know, because he really did think I had quit smoking. And I hadn't quit smoking. And so when he went through the process that he went through, that triggered in my heart a desire to do the same thing, to repent and to take care of what I needed to take care of for our marriage. So in December, we were going out. Every year we go out to visit our daughter in Los Angeles. And so I told him, when we were planning for the trip, I said, I've got to tell you something that I've hid from you for all these years. I said, I still smoke. And he was stunned. He said, I kind of suspected it, but, you know, thanks for telling us. Okay, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to smoke while we're there when I want one. I said, but when we come home, when we get off that plane, I'm giving you whatever cigarettes I have left, and that's it. I'm done. And he was so gracious with that. I mean, he said, okay, I won't bug you. I'll let you do what you need to do. And his support, I think, at that moment, because we were starting to decide that we did need to progress. You know, we just needed to take care of our personal lives and then together as a marriage. And we had a wonderful time. I mean, I didn't smoke very much, but when I did, I went away somewhere and had a cigarette and came back. And when we got off the plane, it was like midnight, you know, one of those late flights from LA. When I got off the plane, I took my pack of cigarettes out and we were walking to our car and I said, here, these are yours, now do what you want with them. And we walked by a trash can and he threw them away. Now, it's not that easy. It's not that easy, but that was the first step. Mm-hmm. And I think the first step was his support. Yeah. The very first step was his saying, okay, I'm behind you. If you have a desire to smoke, call me. You know, so he was my smoke buddy or whatever they call him, you know, that would help. And so I started January 1st of 2019. And because I had smoked at the house with him not knowing, I had a can of old cigarette butts, right? And I had found half a pack hidden somewhere. So for about 3 weeks, I kind of went through this terrible craving where you'd want one, and I'd go find these terrible cigarette butts, you know, and it was awful. They smelled awful, because by then you get used to that, not having that smell, you know. And it was just, and I'd call him and I'd say, oh, I messed up. He said, well, don't do it again, throw it out. So I'd throw that out. And then I found that pack, and I messed up. So, but it was like one day, you know, it was one day messing up, and then I'd throw them out, and then I'd call him back again like 4 or 5 days later. It was one day, and he goes, okay, wet the pack, just throw it out. So I got the pack all wet, and I threw it in the garbage, and I was okay, this is it. And I'm into like the second week now, and I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then I got a craving, and I went out in the garbage, and I pulled them out, and I blow dried. I mean, seriously, right? I mean, that's the addiction.
Desperate for it, yeah.
That's the addiction, you know. And I'm looking at what I'm doing, and I called Blake. I said, Blake, you know, he goes, just crunch him up now, crunch him. Yeah. And I made him take the car keys from me, so I couldn't go out and buy any, you know. And so that was it. That was it. Watching myself blow dry the cigarettes. I gave him the car keys in the 3rd week of January. Was it. That was it. I just prayed, and I know in my heart that I would not have quit smoking if it hadn't been for my Savior helping me. I could not have done it by myself. I could not have done it by myself. And my husband's support and Blake's support. I couldn't have done it.
Sounds like he was a huge help.
Huge. He was such a huge help, you know. And we really had our desire, our intent, the purpose of both of us going through these individual repentance processes was so that we could be married in the temple, so that we could be sealed. That was our goal, to get a temple recommend and to be sealed. And that's what prompted the whole thing, you know. And so, 3rd week of January, that was it. I haven't touched a cigarette since. Wow. I haven't wanted one since. So that was the 3rd week of January, and then I got our temple recommends in April or May, and I took out my endowments in July 6th, and we were sealed in the temple on the week later, July 13th.
It's beautiful.
It wasn't. It's just. It almost makes me cry because it was so. I mean, I just know that the Lord's hand was absolutely in all of this, you know, leading us to this. And the importance of this is that to have to know how deeply this sets in my heart the Savior helping us and protecting us and guiding us in all of this, is to know a little bit about my past.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'm from a family that smoked. All of my dad, my grandma, I mean, it's an Italian family. They have wine and they have cigarettes. They have a big meal and you drink your wine and you have a cigarette afterwards. It's just part of the tradition, you know. So I was raised with that, thinking that there was nothing wrong with that, you know. But my mother, my biological mother, was her and my father got divorced when we were. Four, so it was for 6 of us at that time. She had 2 children from a previous marriage, and then he and my mother had 4 children. And he was over in the war. He was over in Korea, and we lived in New Jersey, close to where his family was. And my mother was an alcoholic at that time, and she abandoned us. She was just out all the time. She never was home. And so my 2 older sisters pretty much, you know, took care of us. But she just didn't come home. I can't remember how it all happened, but she just abandoned us.
Wow.
And so then he had to be called back. And so, but by the time he could come back, he's overseas, they shipped us to live with my grandmother, my mom's mother, in Ogden. And so we went from New Jersey and we lived with my grandmother in Ogden until he came back from the war. And then he wasn't home too long, and he had met my stepmother, a wonderful lady, and she had 2 children. And so we were raised in Layton. They got married and we were raised in Layton, and they had a daughter. So he and her, they were married for like 7 years, and so about just after one of their anniversaries, they went out dancing, and he was a deputy sheriff with the Davis County Police Department, and they came home from the evening and they'd had this big fight, huge fight, and you could just hear this terrible. He was Italian, so it would get loud, you know, and they had this huge fight, and then he stormed out, and of course I was kind of, you know, listening, making sure he was okay, because I was his firstborn. And so he didn't, I was waiting for him to come back, and he didn't come back. So he fell asleep, and so when we got up in the morning, he wasn't there, and everybody thought he'd already gone to work. And so his partner, his sheriff's partner, knocked at the door and asked if he was there, and we were all like, no, he should be at work, he's not here. And so they did kind of APB out on him, and they couldn't find him. Hours went by, and so they finally came back to the house. Well, has anybody looked in the garage? And so we walked out to the garage, and he was about that far away from the garage door that was shut, and it had thrown up and had carbon monoxide poisoning. And so, of course, he went to the hospital, and my stepmother left us.
Oh, wow.
And so my grandfather at the time was in Ogden, and being a proud Sicilian, he pulled Dad out of the rehab center before he should have pulled him out of the rehab center, because he lost like 3/4 of his memory cells and short-term memory. And so we had our house in Layton, and Mom was gone, and Dad had carbon monoxide poisoning, and so he wasn't really functioning very well. And so, I mean, I had to sell the house, so I sold the house. My 2 older sisters went with my real mother through a whole other set of situations, so it's just the 4 of us girls, because my half-sister went with my stepmom. So it's just the 4 of us girls and my dad. So we sold the house, and we bought a house. Don't ask me how I did it. I was like...
How old were you?
I was like 15, maybe 16.
Wow.
And so we bought a house down the street, and we moved into there, but of course I didn't know what I was doing.
Well, you're 15.
I'm not quite sure what I'm doing here. And so then the state came in and called my mom, and she came down and she picked up 2 of the girls.
This is your stepmom?
That's my real mom.
Oh.
She's in Iowa.
So they found her.
Yeah, my 2 older sisters went. So, so we bought that little house down the street, and, you know, it became very difficult to take care of it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was, you know, 15 years old or whatever, and so it got foreclosed on, and the state came in, and they contacted my mother, who was in Iowa. So they contacted her, and she came to Utah and picked up my 2 sisters, Jean and Marianne, and then my sister Tara and I stayed with my dad. And we took the money that we had, and they rented a little motel down on, my sister and dad rented a little motel down on State Street. And so, and then I just went on my own. At that point, I had some friends that had a house in Ogden, and I stayed with them a little bit. Crash pads, I guess you'd call them, back in the hippie days, you know. So I would crash at their places, and then I had a friend that I had gone to school with for a while.
Tell us, just so they have some context, how your 16th birthday went.
So I spent my 16th birthday. I was pretty much homeless, but I spent my 16th birthday that night. We slept in the park, in the Ogden Park, down on Washington Boulevard. And it really wasn't as scary back then as it would be today, but it was still, you know, it was still kind of weird, you know. Yeah. But it was the hippie days, and so you had, everybody was crashing in the park. Everybody was sleeping in the park. You had people smoking marijuana and drinking and taking acid, and I mean, that was just the environment, you know. You had the rock and roll music, and so we just, my friend and I, girlfriend and I, we just ended up sleeping in the park, and we woke up the next day, and it was my birthday, and so we were all just having a good time, and we were drinking and smoking, and you know, music was going all over, and it was, you know, you're talking, what, 67, 68, you know, the height of the...
Is that when you first started smoking? Or had you been doing it before you left the home?
I had already been doing it before that, a little bit before that, but
so
that's really when that's probably when I really started to do it, was when I was out on my own. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Because I didn't think I had money to buy it when I was with Dad. I don't think I smoked when we were with Dad. And I definitely didn't smoke when, you know, when he and Mom were, my stepmom were married. And I'm like, yeah, so I think I did. I've always smoked since I was 16. In my brain, I've always smoked. I started smoking when I was 16. So yeah.
And I have kind of a naive question, but did you take to it right away? Did you like it?
No.
So what was the pull to keep smoking?
I think it was just it was something that you held in your hand. You know, it was something that it was, I don't know, it's weird. It's like, it's holding it in your hand, and when I was stressed or nervous, you know, if I was wondering what the day was going to bring, you know, each day, at that point, it just sort of gave me that sort of comfort. It's weird that was the emotion. It just like comforted me, you know. Something I was holding that was mine. It was very, very strange. And then after that, I just became, you know,
addicted to it.
Addicted. Yeah, you just become addicted, and you don't think you're addicted. You know, in your brain, you don't think you're addicted. You could think you can quit anytime. But back then, I mean, everybody smoked. You know, everybody was drinking and smoking, and I mean, it was the hippie era, you know, and I was right in there with it, you know. And so there was like that. It just wasn't part of my environment at all. You know, to think about quitting or think about how bad it was for me or anything. It was just part of what you did. You know, back then, when you get caught up into all that, you don't think about that. Even kids today, you know, when they get caught up into drinking and smoking, you don't. It just becomes your lifestyle, you know. So I never really thought about it. But we were having a good time laughing on the sidewalk in the street, and this gentleman came by, and he looked at the two of us, and he just goes, oh, why are you guys so happy? What's going on? And we're like, well, it's my birthday. It's my birthday.
I'm 16.
I'm 16 today. It's my sweet 16th birthday. And he was just the nicest old gentleman. He took us to Bon Marché, which is, right it was on the corner of 25th Street and Washington Boulevard, and bought me an outfit for my birthday. So I had a brand new birthday outfit. Didn't want anything for it. Just bought us lunch, bought me an outfit, and left. Oh, I think he gave us some money too. I think he gave us some money. Yeah, he was a good Samaritan. He was just a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was just a good guy. But I'll always remember that.
Yeah.
I'll always remember that. That was one of those beginnings of the many blessings that the Lord gave me. Yeah. As I was out on my own, as I progressed through my life out on my own. I knew that the Lord was with me. Huh. And I've always had sort of a strong spiritual sense in my heart and in my mind. We grew up, my grandmother was a Latter-day Saint, and we grew up Catholic, and then my stepmother was a Baptist, and a Southern Baptist, and so anyway, so I just, in my heart, I just knew that was a blessing when he came by. I mean, that started in my mind, the counting the number of blessings that I would get throughout my life. That very first one with him. And the fact that I was safe. Yeah. I was safe. I was 16, sleeping in the park. I mean, yeah, there was a couple of other incidents there, but nothing that was, terrible. All these little experiences in my life where he's protected me and kept me safe from my stupidity, a lot of it. But again, just from I didn't know what I was doing. I was just going from wherever I needed to go to be safe, And then I met my daughter's father and got pregnant and had my wonderful daughter at 18. And I went on assistance for the first time in my life. And I had things going on in my brain, because when you're out on your own at such a young age, you don't know what you don't know, but you don't know a lot, because you didn't have that home life to kind of teach you the things that you needed to do to grow up, correctly in your brain, sort of developmental stuff. And so I think just the whole stress of I was in a good spot because I was always being taken care of. The Lord always made sure I was taken care of. I had money, I had some safety, I had a good safety net, I had a home, I had good friends. And everywhere he put me throughout all that path, there's different stories in there, where I knew I was being blessed, where I knew I was being protected, and I would just let him lead me where I needed to be. Sort of to wrap this all up and to get back to the point of my smoking, when I came back to Utah, I was starting over. Coming back to Utah represented a time to start over. So I'd had all of these experiences, lived a lot of different places, but I felt that it was time that through my therapy, it was actually called, it actually has a name for it, it's called the burnt child syndrome. It comes about when a child is on their own most of their life, and they're developing their own way of looking at life, which sometimes is in conflict with the way life really is for every other human being, on the planet. And so I figured that, through all of those times in my life, I always knew the Lord was with me. I might not have called him the Lord at that time, but I knew I was being guided, and I knew I was being put where I needed to be. And so, I never looked at life negatively, I guess. I never became angry or frustrated or pitied or poor me or why is this happening to me, because I had developed my own sense of understanding what life was about, and I figured there's always a way. There's always a way to make things work, was one of my mottos. And the other one was that I'm here for a reason. And so if I always looked at life that I was there for a reason, and there was something I could learn from it, then that was how I looked at wherever I ended up. There was always circumstances that led me here, and led me here, and led me here, and coincidences, and I'd end up here. And so coming back to Utah was one of those points in my life. There was a pivotal point in my life. But again, I smoked all the way through. Smoked from 16 all the way through. As I said earlier, it was a comfort thing to me. That was the one thing that I held on to. That was always constant in my life, which is a strange thing to think about, right? The only constant in my life is my cigarettes that were with me, and my daughter, of course. And so that was my stress reliever. You know, when I felt like, where am I supposed to be, and when am I supposed to learn, and you know, how do I deal with these situations? That was where I would always light up a cigarette. I could take a deep breath, and I'd pace the floor, and I'd think. It was my thinking tool. You know, it was the thing that calmed me down and helped me to think. And so it was like my friend. And so I still continued to smoke, and it was in that period in my life that I started working with the state. And so now you're talking from that point in my life to today. I worked with the state 29 years, and that's pretty dang stable. And that's getting up. I mean, I didn't have a car, of course. I took the bus. But the point, I guess, is just that it's how you look at life that counts. You know, and I had never really thought about like my health with cigarettes or anything, because they were just such an integral part of who I was. And, you know, they'd been with me. They were my constant companion. You know, and again, my sisters still smoked. And then I met Blake, and that takes us back to where we are now. I've known him 31 years of my life. He's been a part of my life. And because of that relationship with him, I was brought to the gospel, you know, and from the gospel I was brought to an understanding of that spiritualness that I always had growing up, you know, from my growing up, and I felt like I was coming home. You know, coming home to Utah was one piece of it, but coming home, finding Blake, and then finding the gospel, and being baptized, and then, you know, sort of all those little steps that took me to us being married, to moving to North Ogden, to having a beautiful, beautiful neighbors that just, you know, encompassed us and brought us into the ward, and incredible bishops and people who were our home. Is the home teachers? Who are the men? Yeah, he was wonderful. We had this one guy that came, like, he was just wonderful for years and years and years, and he would just keep talking to us. Okay, when are you going to come back to church? And when are you going to come back to church? And I challenge you to get married in the temple. And his challenge that last time, where like finally Blake looks at me and he goes, I think Blake really wanted. Yeah. He wanted to go back. He needed to go back. He goes, let's just go. I go, okay. Okay. So we just went back to church, and we went back to church the day that this gentleman that just was so wonderful to us, our home teacher, was leaving. He and his wife found another apartment, and so we just went to Sacrament for almost a year, you know. And then we had a couple of friends sit down next to us, and they're dear friends now. And this one, the lady's my dear friend, she's like, well, you want to try Sunday school? So we tried Sunday school, you know. Because I was always, you know, because I'd read, like, I think I told you earlier, I'd read, you know, about metaphysics, and I had Quran, and so I'd had some knowledge, and I wasn't real sure how a organized church, you know, was going to fit with all these ideas. Yeah, that I had thought about, and it seriously, as we progressed, and then I went to Relief Society, it felt like I was coming home. It felt like all those things that I had taught myself when I was out on my own, and all the beliefs I've had that he led me where I needed to be, and he was always protecting me. Or the universe, back then the universe was protecting me. But when I became a member, I now realized who it really was that was protecting me. And it was God, and it was our Savior, Jesus Christ, who was watching out for me so many different ways. And it just felt, that's where I needed to be. Again, he led me where I needed to be. Mm-hmm. And as we went to church, and it just felt like home, and that brings us to where we were in 2018. It was, okay, we need to go to the temple. We need to be sealed. We need our marriage and our growth to continue. And so those promptings, that he gives you, and the little, tender mercies that he gives you, are the lessons that you learn in life are there for a reason. And so it was that strength that he gave me, and that he gave Blake, and because of what he gave both of us, that brought us where we are today. And I seriously, I cannot be happier. Mm. I don't feel bad about my life. I don't think that, I have no anger, no self-pity, it was just part of my progression. It was part of what makes me who I am today. Mm-hmm. And gives me that strength that I need today. So I started off the story, letting you know that it's somebody who quit smoking, but it was a pretty big thing for me to give up smoking, and that's the roundabout way of coming back to where we are now. Is I couldn't have done it without the Lord, and I couldn't have done it. It was like giving up something that was a part of who I was, but it's not who I am now. This is how I'm going to be in the future. So I hope that what I've expressed can benefit somebody out there. Never give up, never lose hope, and always put your faith in yourself and in the Lord. You have to have faith that he loves you and will protect you and lead you where you need to be, and give you the lessons that you need to learn to be where you need to be. So.
Awesome. Thank you.